Hello, I'm Dr. Laura Murillo, President and CEO of the Houston Hispanic Chamber of Commerce.
And I'm Sarah Frazier, Senior Vice President and General Manager of CBS Radio Houston.
We appreciate you joining us, and with us today we have mayoral candidate Bill King. Welcome. Thanks for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Well, we'd like to start out, of course, with our very first question, which is, why should you be mayor of Houston, Texas?
Well, the reason I'm running is because I think we live in one of the most incredible cities in the world. It's got this can-do spirit. You know, we can put men on the moon, do all these incredible things. And it's got this great welcoming heart. We welcome people from all over the world, all over the rest of the country that want to come here and make a better life. But I'm becoming increasingly alarmed that we have a city government that's not living up to the greatness of our city. And I'm worried about our infrastructure, I'm worried about crime, and I'm worried about our finances primarily. And so I'm running to try to get those things back in order.
Well, you touched upon many of the questions we'll be asking you shortly, but I'll punt to Sarah now.
One of our biggest concerns is voter apathy. And so in the last election, we had less than 200,000 people vote for mayor. The two areas that we have talked about have been millennials and the Latino vote. And how important do you think those segments are to the vote this term, and how are you going to get that vote out?
Well, there's frankly not a lot a single candidate can do to drive voter turnout up. These are fundamentally sort of demographic issues. You know, the single best predictor of whether someone will vote in a city election or not is whether they own their home. And if you think about it, that's the first time you really start thinking about, what are my property taxes? Are the police going to show up, or the firefighters going to show up? It's when you've got a home and you've got a family and start raising kids like we were talking about before we went on. And so that's what motivates people to go vote. So as a result, city voters are much older on average than the voting population generally. And you know, I wish that weren't the case, but I doubt it's going to change much, frankly.
Well, earlier you mentioned some of the city's issues, and among them, very important, revenue cap, the pension plan, and balancing the city's budget. So talk to us a little bit about those three things.
In 30 seconds or
less? Yes, sir.
Take your time.
Yeah, I'm against repealing a revenue cap. The city does not have a revenue problem. The budget that was just approved about a month ago, we're going to collect $1 billion more in taxes and fees than we did 6 years ago when this administration started. $1 billion more. Property taxes are up 24%, sales tax 37%, water rates 42%, licensing and permits is up 100%. Now, you know, so how much more does it have to go up for us to be able to balance the budget? And we need to concentrate on the spending side. You know, there's a lot of issues about the city's finances. I think we need to go to zero-based budgeting and make sure we really need all these departments. I think that we need to concentrate on things like $75 million of overtime we spend year after year after year without trying to right-size the workforce to eliminate that overtime. No business in the world would put up with that. And by the way, to put that in some perspective, $75 million is about what we spend on the Parks Department every year. So if you weren't spending $75 million a year on overtime, you could double the Parks budget. But the elephant in the room that nobody wants to talk about is the pensions. That's the real driver, the financial stress in the city's budget. We've got these old defined benefit plans, which private industry got away from 2 or 3 decades ago. They're not sustainable in the long run, and we've got to reform that system. I'm not in favor of taking away benefits that have already been earned. I don't think that's right. I don't think you can. You know, in Texas, a deal's a deal, and you need to live up to your promises. But to continue to make these promises to new employees that are coming into the system is irresponsible. It's irresponsible to taxpayers, and it's irresponsible to those employees, because the truth of the matter is these young people going to work for the city that think they're going to have these huge pensions at the end of 30 years, it's not going to happen because the city can't afford it.
This is one of the basic tenets of your campaign, Pops will fix the potholes. I think we've seen that. But the Kinder Institute just announced in their study that for the first time ever, infrastructure is the biggest concern with Houstonians. So let's talk about how Pops is going to fix the potholes.
Well, look, you know, getting the streets fixed is not a technological problem. I mean, we know how to fix potholes. It's a question of applying the resources and then good management. And by the way, we didn't wake up with 4,000 potholes all of a sudden one night. The pothole gremlin didn't come down and put 4,000 potholes in the city overnight. That's the result of taking our eye off the ball for a very long period of time and not investing the money that's necessary to improve the streets. You know, I've complained a lot about the Rebuild Houston program. We adopted that 5 years ago. That was supposed to solve all these problems. I think our infrastructure is clearly worse now than it was 5 years ago. That would indicate to me the program's not working. And we did infrastructure for 180 years in a particular way, which is we had bond elections. And we had the voters, we listed the projects for them, we told them how much it was going to cost, and they got to vote on whether they wanted to go forward or not with that cost. And I think it's that we ought to go back to it. Worked for 180 years. We haven't done a road bond in, I don't know, 10 or 12 years now. And you see the result out here in Richmond, right by your studio.
Mm-hmm. Well, and certainly for many of the Houstonians, major concerns about what's happening across the country, relationships between law enforcement and their communities that they're serving. What would be your plan to make sure that Houston does not experience those challenges?
Yeah. So it is a challenging environment. We've been fortunate here in Houston because we have not had many incidences. And I think that, you know, a number of years ago, HPD went to a community policing model, which I think has put us well ahead of many other departments in the country. But I've had a little bit of experience with this when I was mayor of Kemah, managing the police force there. What police officers want to know is that you're going to be behind them when something goes wrong, that you're not going to be out there, you know, holding a press conference, crucifying. These guys deal with a lot of very difficult situations. That's not to say they don't make mistakes. That's not to say that there's not bad apples that you need to get rid of. But there's a process to go through that, and we shouldn't rush to judgment. I sat on a grand jury a number of years ago in a police shooting case. And the story that you saw in the newspaper was that a police officer had shot this young man in the back. Well, it just so happened this happened in an apartment complex where there was a videotape. And so we got to see the whole thing on videotape. And this young man was running with a gun, pointed at the officer, and the officer shot and missed him, and it scared the young man, and he turned. In that instance that he turned, the police officer got off the second shot, which hit him kind of going through the shoulder back here. So, you know, absolutely justified shooting, but the story in the paper was he got shot in the back. So you got to have a mayor that stands up and say, no, that's not what happened. Let me tell you what happened.
Do you believe in body cams?
I think they're a good tool. I don't think they're a panacea. You know, listen, the fact that everybody is carrying around a video camera in their pocket now has changed policing forever.
Mm-hmm.
So the other issue that has been very controversial here in Houston is the Equal Rights Ordinance. Where do you stand on that?
Oh, what a mess. You know, I would give anything if City Hall would spend as much time fixing streets as they do fighting with people down at the courthouse. Look, I've got gay business partners that are, you know, like family to me. We have a gay member in our extended family. I don't believe that anybody ought to be mistreated. I don't think that people ought to be discriminated against. But, you know, I didn't see that in Houston before the ordinance. I mean, this has always seemed like to me this is one of the most open, welcoming cities there is in the country. And, you know, my gay friends didn't come to me and say, you know, Bill, we can't get into restaurants. What they came to me and said, I got a pothole in front of my house I can't get fixed. They came to me and said, you know, my car got broken into. Why aren't we concentrating on the core mission of the city instead of these other issues? You know, and even if there is a discrimination problem, the city is uniquely unqualified to take care of this. I mean, look, we had 30,000 burglaries and robberies that were not solved last year in this city. 30,000. By the way, many of the victims of those 30,000 were members of minority protected classes, including the LGBT community. If the city cannot enforce basic criminal statutes like burglary and robbery, how in the world is this organization going to end discrimination in the city of Houston? So I would have never gone there. I'm worried about the consequences of repealing it now that we have it. I'm afraid it's going to send the wrong message to the rest of the country. I'm worried about the effect on business. I don't think there's a good answer. I'm not sure what we ought to do, candidly.
So here's a question just for us to get to know you better as a person. What do you like most about this great city?
Got some great restaurants here, for sure. And I travel a lot, and I got to tell you what, I'll put our restaurants up against any place in the world. I guess the thing that I like best about the city, and this is something a lot of Houstonians don't know, is we have this incredible body of water, you know, 20 or 30 miles away called Galveston Bay, which I grew up on. And it is just an incredible recreational opportunity for the city that, frankly, not enough Houstonians take advantage of. I grew up fishing and sailing and crabbing and and shrimping and everything down there. And it's just a few miles away, and it's a wonderful body of water. I've been real involved with Galveston Bay Foundation, and we've done a lot of work on bringing it back to what it was once upon a time. If you can imagine, there are accounts of Galveston Bay back in the early 1800s that you could see a silver dollar in 10 feet of water in Galveston Bay, if you can imagine that. So hopefully one day we'll be back to that.
Let's fix the potholes first.
Yeah.
So as we close up the conversation, anything that you would like the viewers to know about you?
Well, look, candidly, I don't need this job. The only reason I'm doing this is because I feel like my generation has not left the sort of legacy for our kids and grandkids that previous generations of Houstonians left for the city. I mean, look, previous generations left us the biggest medical center in the world. They left us a ship channel that's dug 50 miles inland, Johnson Spacecraft Center, all these incredible institutions in this city. And I kind of look at our generation and say, what have we really done except created a big debt to give these kids? And so I would like to fix the finances, and then let's go forward and let's do something for the next generation. Why don't we finish the Linear Park project? That's been on the books in Houston for 100 years. Why don't we be the generation that finishes that project and gives that to the future generations of Houstonians? Why don't we take this incredible clinical base, the biggest clinical base in the world, and turn that into the biotech Silicon Valley of the world right here in Houston? We could do that. You think about that corridor over there. We got University of Houston, TSU, HCC, the Medical Center, Rice, the Bakey Medical. All of that is within about a 2-mile axis. Why couldn't that be the Silicon Valley of biotech for the world right here in Houston? I think we could do that.
Well, on behalf of the Houston Hispanic Chamber of Commerce and CBS Radio, we thank you for joining us, Bill King. Thanks for tuning in.